21st already of June. I'll be your host tonight. Dana, you can call in at 709 589 4406. 709 09 4406. How'd everybody enjoy the cannibal seagulls today? We went out looking for birds. We're going to play we got a bunch of little clips, some pictures. We'll do that right away. And we were out on the boat today. It was the strangest, saddest thing unimaginable. We've been noticing there's no sea urchins or mussels or snails or species in the tidal zones. So at low tide, normally the seagulls and birds will rush to the tide zones and just meander through it and get a lot to eat and go on their merry way, right? They were exterminated because of Fukushima. And so now the birds, during breeding season, they're cannibalizing the chicks. And we're just going to jump into some pictures, or videos first, and then work our way up. And work our way up. Come on. I can't find the folder. There it is. So we're going to take a step backwards, actually, to 20 days ago. So 20 days ago, on the 1st of June, was the last of 5 days out on the boat. And right by the fish plant, which is quite a long ways away, I was noticing for the first time we were seeing excrement from the birds, but there was no birds. And so I took a bunch of pictures because that's the first time it's in 5 days at this point that we had seen excrement. And what I mean by that is the birds will defecate where they're to, nesting, and it looks like chalk, kind of a chalk color, on a gray background. It'll stand out. The whole coastline is just raggedy. It's beautiful for nesting, right? It's just absolute paradise for nest. And the tide zone should be full of mussels and sea urchins and all kinds of species. Not like the Pacific, but certainly tons of it, right? So for posterity's sakes, because you don't know, next year you might not see this no more, this is 5 days of searching. To me, it seems impossible that we're 5 days later and we're only seeing, and we only found this one spot. Now, I didn't understand the big picture. And the big picture was, I'm going to adjust the volume, I guess. Is volume off? Yeah. On camera, because you might not see another place like that. And that's because the fish plant is just a couple of minutes away from me. Stop it. You see the church in there? Damn it. I'll get it. You can see the peak of the red, that's the church. Fish plant is right in there. Oh, right, But that's all excrement up there. It stands out like a sore thumb, right? This is right alongside of the fish plant. I'm going to get off the video and take some pictures, because So that was right off the fish plant, and on the other side of the hill, this is what it looked like. And that's the only time you've seen the birds feeding. It's a magic sound to me, because we don't hear it anywhere, right? It should be like this all over the place. It should be like this all over the ocean. I got the motor off so I can actually hear him. And I believe this is where the birds are getting food to raise the young birds. Because you don't see them feeding anywhere. This is the only spot we see them feeding. And this is where the waste is coming out into the ocean. See them on the roof. Now we're not seeing that anywhere else. This is the only time we're seeing this is at a fish plant. And this should be natural. This should be everywhere you go. And so this was 20 days ago. So I just discovered where the birds, because there's 2 nesting colonies on the other side in the other bay. Let me fix this actually before I get off it. Okay. And so to me, that was just, I had to turn the motor off and just bask in the sound of the seagulls, because it's been years since we heard that in nature, right? And so they're getting their food to feed. That's what the 2 little nesting colonies that are probably 2,000 generations in the next bay are getting their food. I just want to. Now, this was last year, and I was out researching. This is fog, not smoke. It's blowing heavy wind. I've never seen anything like that in my life. Fog blowing right across in front of me. It's not fog. Fog would disperse in this kind of wind. Fog can't exist. That's what I mean when I say that's the strangest thing you'll ever see. Fog can't do what you're looking at. And it's showing up on the camera. On top of that, I can see it on my side. I've never seen fog. That is surreal. Bouncing off the road and trees right alongside of me. It doesn't work. In wind. That is surreal. We used to pray for a bit of wind to disperse the fog when we're on the ocean, right? So even 10 right kilometers. To me, right against me and off the bike. This fog is bouncing off me and bouncing off the trailer, bouncing off the bike. Fog doesn't do that. Pollen does what you're looking at. But that's not pollen. But fog doesn't. So fog doesn't, and we're going to jump to pictures and more videos of from today. I wanted to go back to last year because that was on a trip looking for spiders, and bees, and wasps, and insects, and trout, which there was none jumping in any of the ponds, and probably checked 70, 80 ponds. And that was 2 days or 3 days. I hurt my hip, right, on that trip last year. Okay, so let's come back and go to today's pictures. Now, to tell the story, I got to go to a video that I shot today. Nothing's complicated at all. It's not even a little bit complicated. So I got 47 views on this stream that I done today. This is an amazing stream. 2023. We're looking for any seabirds just to get a shakedown trip in. We're waiting for the groundswell to come down over the next couple of days. Let me shift ahead. I just got tucked. So I'm coming into this island, and I know there's a gull colony there. We're going to see what other birds might be on this island. We're going to go. The idea is to go around the island and just explore it. Now the tide is just starting to go down, and so I'm a little confused because I think as when we're talking, I'm live streaming that this morning. We're going to wander over there. Let's hope I'm wrong. We won't know until we get a bit closer. We won't know until we get a bit closer. Looks like it's high tide. The tide is starting to fall. And so I got to go in here and just see if I'm correct in what I just said. No, they're feeding on the shoreline there, I think. And then I realized through... So they're not eating anything. Bird. Instead of diving and feeding on fish and any other kind of fish, they're trying to feed at the high tide line. The tide is just going down. So they're feeding on maybe krill. They're not krill, but the small shrimp or something. Invertebrates with the backbones. Then to my horror. No, he's killing a little baby bird. That's what he's doing. That's exactly what he's doing. So it might be a different species. He just pulled it out of the nest. There's a few cormorants up at the top. You probably can't see that. We're going to take another shot in and see if we can see what that seagull just pulled out of the nest. If they're eating their own babies, then that would be because there's no food. And so let's go and find out what they're eating. And as disgusting as that might sound to everybody. Let's get in there, right in there. Let's go and hit a few rocks, maybe. We're just going to do like another minute of this. I want to explain it with the pictures that are coming up. Yeah, they shouldn't be feeding on baby birds. They should be feeding on fish. Okay, so... So I go in, we're live streaming, and I thought I see one of the seagulls grab a baby bird on top of the cliff and throw it down. And I didn't think really that's what happened, so we were trying to talk our way through what we were looking at. And then we realized that's actually what happened. They're cannibalizing the baby seagulls. They'll do that when there's no food, right? And so that whole colony, because none of them are diving around the colony, and we went around it, there was about 100 cormorants, which are not indigenous to the province, shouldn't be here, and disappeared off the west coast in 2019 from British Columbia. And there was about 200 or a little bit more than that maybe of tickleass. They're like little tiny versions of seagulls. But they're unique, right? They're really they're amazing birds, and I seen 2 puffins. Now there should be tons of other species, and you'll have to watch the video to kind of wrap your mind around that story. But there's nothing feeding out in the harbor. So okay, so now let's go to the pictures. Let's get rid of that because I'm live streaming my show and I'm live streaming YouTube. That's probably going to turn out bad. That's probably going to turn out bad. What have I got done here? We got a poll tonight, by the way. Let's try the poll first. Is calling nuclear power carbon-free a pathetic act of desperation by the nuclear industry? I asked a question, but the answer is pretty obvious. That is what's going on. This is desperation, what the nuclear industry is doing. Okay, back to the pictures from today. And some videos, I think. And sure enough, when you zoom in, that's what he's doing. He's eating a baby bird. So this is extraordinary because normally at the tide zone, there's all kinds of food for him to eat. The other bird kept the back to the predator, the cannibal, the whole time. It wasn't like normally the gulls will fight over food, but that's not what was happening. And that was the underwater shot, sorry. Back here, is it? Yeah. Try to eat the whole thing the one time here in a minute. Watch, there it is. Look, trying to eat the whole thing because I'm there. Damn little cannibal. Crazy little cannibal, eh? So there's birds there. And they're not feeding in the ocean. There's no birds coming back and forth. Right? They're just staying there. So the assumption is, and we have to go over and over to prove it, but the assumption is they're feeding at the fish plant. Right? That's how they're raising the fledglings. Where they're getting the food is from the fish plant. Yeah, so the theory is that the weather changed this afternoon. Finally, the wind is blowing after almost 3 weeks of northerly and easterly winds. Unbelievable, eh? But we're getting winds fairly strong tonight of westerly, which is offshore, which is just what we want. That'll bring the ground swells down and the waves down right away. And tomorrow morning, it's going to be light winds from the west. And for the next 2 weeks, it's basically all westerly winds. Tomorrow, basically, is the first day of summer here. It's going to be around 75, 80 degrees tomorrow. So it's been in single digits up until... We had a couple of days, because we got out 5 days. This is one of them. A few weeks ago, but it's been just nasty weather again. So now it looks like summer's finally going to show up. I'm going to head out tomorrow. I filled up 2 of the tanks, was 175 for gas, and I spent another 115 for the truck, because you can't get the boat in the water without the truck, right? But I'm planning on getting out here every day. Okay, so let's get into the show tonight. And I'm pretty sure tomorrow is going to be crazy because we finally got a break in the weather. It's going to be a warm day, sunny day. I got to pinch myself. I can't actually believe summer is actually finally here. We're out in the Atlantic, in the North Atlantic, so it's still pretty miserable. Today was like 15 degrees and a bit of sunshine. And then we got to get shakedown sales in, right? Okay. So the show tonight is from March the 7th. Because we done I gather up shows, but we never get them done, right? And so when I got a full day doing stuff, I got shows I can pull out of the hat like a rabbit. And we got this is important stuff. We'll get to here. We'll go through that, and tomorrow I'm gonna get up. We got high tide is midday, so I can catch the tide coming up and the tide falling. And we're going to have a beautiful westerly wind and hot temperatures. And so at 35 gallons, I filled up 24 of them. 25, 26 maybe. Because there was a little bit of gas. But what I didn't realize was that trip up to the fish plant on the 1st, it's quite a haul because I was having problems with the engine, so you're bucking the waves, and on the way back, the weather had got bad on me, right? So I was pushing water the whole time, so I burnt a lot of gas. And when I checked the gas, I was out there today to check the gas, and I was like, oh shit, I just got enough to get in with. It's a good thing I checked it, man. Well, I had the kicker there. I had lots of gas for the kicker. But when I checked the kicker, by the way, it was half full. And so I got a leak in the jerry can. I got that out there. Hopefully that'll be fixed in the morning. So I'm going to carry a 1 gallon jerry can of gas for the kicker because the kicker can only hold half a tank. I won't have to use it, I don't think, right? It's just if the other engine goes down, I got the kicker, right? U.S. government plans to hike... So don't mind me. I'm a bit scatterbrained because... That blew me away today. Go out there and the first only gull feeding was cannibalizing babies. And it was all business too, man. And the other gull wasn't trying to step in. Had his back to him. I don't speak gull language, unfortunately, but I'm assuming that's... Let's get going here. Let's check the poll one more time before we do that. Okay. Is calling nuclear power carbon-free pathetic? Because like all nuclear power plants need 2 gas, oil, and coal plants dedicated to build it, to run it for 50 years, and to decommission it for 60 years. So they need dedicated gas and oil, coal, at least 2 of them, completely dedicated to them, for at least 100 years. They can't run on their own power. Geothermal, though, can run on its own power. It doesn't need any storage. And here we go. UK government plans to hike revenue clawback rates. So this is where they cause inflation. They allow the big corporations to gouge you, and then say if they gouge you an extra $1, they have to kick back 30 cents to the government. The government's going to kick that back to you in subsidies, so you're a total slave to the government. They're going to rob you and kick you back a fraction of it, and it's pretty despicable. It's completely dysfunctional, right? That's because the nuclear industry has infiltrated the governments, the universities, the medias. They're entrenched in it completely now since the 50s and 60s. And so they got it destroyed on us. There's no future, no matter how you look at it, with nuclear on the planet. higher rates. Many Fukushima mayors reluctant to take a stand on nuclear energy shift. Many Fukushima mayors. And the destroyed reactor 1, that blew up. The fuel pools caught fire and burnt continuously. And it's believed the reactor core went China syndrome deep into the earth. And because it burnt, it basically liquefied at 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures, and it cannibalizes everything around it. And it atomizes and aerosols, ionizes and radiates, and releases these as lethal plumes to everything with replicating cells. And it travels around the world very quickly in a matter of weeks. And you have a continuous plume covering the planet of radiation and infecting all floras, faunas, and all the species. So several mayors of 3 prefectures hardest hit showed a reluctance to voice an opinion about the government's return to reliance on nuclear power. These are puppets, right? And the sensitivity issue, particularly in the areas still not completely recovered from the twin disasters. What about the nuclear meltdown? Because there was 3 disasters, and the nuclear meltdown was worse than everything combined. So they polled mayors from 37 municipalities in the Pacific Coast in the nuclear wastelands of Iwate, Miyagi, and Fukushima prefectures, and 5 others where evacuation orders were issued following the triple. There was actually 4 meltdowns and 8 fuel pools. They call it a triple. They downplayed every facet of this. Each year, they downplay how many evacuated, how much land was radiated, how many bags they have of radiation. They chip away at it, right? And because people stop paying attention, it doesn't mean that it's not important. In addition, mayors of 3 municipalities lying within a 30-kilometer radius of the Okanagawa plant in Miyagi Prefecture, which is a nuclear wasteland, were also asked to review. For 45 mayors, 19 were somewhat or totally opposed to the reversion of nuclear energy, and 14 were somewhat or total in favor. So a lot of these are built usually between communities, and the communities become completely dependent upon the handouts from the nuclear industry to survive. The mayors of 6 municipalities that either host a number 1 plant like Okuma or Futaba are in close proximity to the plant, did not take a clear stand in any of the questions in the surveys, which is unusual. They're usually just degenerate scum, right? When the mayors were, but these communities have been evacuated for 12 years because of radioactive fallout, because it's not like a banana. When the mayors were contacted individually, many said with so many residents still living as evacuees away from the municipalities, expressing a clear option on nuclear energy would only divide those with different views. Well, the different views are the lawyers and the people that are honest. Because there's no fence on this subject. You're either a lawyer, a lying degenerate scumbag, or you're a victim. And even the scumbags are victims. But the lies are really something. It's hideous, the lies we've covered over all these years. Well, we do it every day, unfortunately, and you lose faith in humanity when you're covering this topic, that's for sure. 8 Fukushima mayors did say they were somewhat or totally opposed to returning to the reliance on nuclear energy. And the only Fukushima mayor who was somewhat in favor of nuclear energy was, in of all places, Tomoka. But in response to questions, Yamamoto recalled the difficulties he faced with discussions about a final storage site for so-called low-level radioactive waste from the Fukushima plant. There's no low-level waste coming out of Fukushima plant. There's none. in my heart, he said, I am opposed. But he couldn't say that. He had to say it subversively in order to say it. 31 of the mayors said they felt either somewhat or totally negative. How can you be on a fence about the government's effort? Even 9 mayors who favored reverting back to nuke energy felt the Kishida administration done a poor job of explaining the reasons for doing so. No, they just come out and blurted it out. We're going to return to nuclear with no manpower. They've been unemployed for 11 years. So the workforce is way behind, right? You don't have a supply network. You don't have, the university is no longer teaching those skills because you shut down everything in the fleet in the country. After radiation exposure deteriorated his body, a military veteran or a veteran starts a nonprofit offering others affordable holistic care, which has always been, now lately, not always, but for the last number of decades has been frowned upon, let's put it that way. Crouch visited to the emergency room started when he was serving in the Navy, the American Navy, and responded to the Fukushima nuclear disaster. The Reagan was within 1 mile of the Meltdowns. And he changed 13 helicopter engines because they were so radioactive on that ship. Like many veterans, no stranger to hospital rooms. He visited the emergency room started when he was serving in the Navy and ended up in Fukushima. Yeah, we know that, Dana. I was exposed to all that radiation. It was a lot, way more than anybody should have ever been exposed to. Yeah, the sailors, all their watches, their digital watches stopped working at the same time. That's as oh shit as it gets, right? Green energy game changer, the environmental benefits of nuclear fusion. Now, there's a story from last night. I'm not covering it tonight, but I'll probably cover it tomorrow night. Or not really sure what tomorrow's going to bring us because we're going back out on the boat. But there was somebody pushing thorium energy, calling it green energy. And it really got to me, because you're using uranium-233, 232. 232 has a half-life of 60 or 70 years. So around 600 or 700 year lifetime. It's a very, very highly energetic isotope on top of that. And the 233 has a half-life of 60,000 years or something. It's pretty energetic for 60,000 years because it's man-made. So when they say the longer the half-life, the less energy, that's not true. For man-made, that's only true for natural stuff. That's how they're manipulating the population, by conflating it with stupid, harmless, innocuous, natural stuff. But there's also, because they're breeder reactors, a thorium reactor to work has to be a breeder reactor where it's making more than it's producing. So it's a ridiculous, insidious machine. And it also needs plutonium-238. So when people talk about a thorium reactors, and every once in a while that'll pop up on the site here, right? I remember somebody called in, one of the pro-nuclear called in a number of years ago, and they asked me what I thought about thorium reactors, and that's what I told them, right? The 232 to 233 and uraniums and the plutonium-238, they're real problems. Just because they don't have a billion-year half-life don't mean they're not a nightmare and a disaster, right? And I nailed him anyway. That was the end of it. What the hell was his name? Because I can almost see the name in my head here. As pointed out by Andrew Hollins, I'll probably remember it in a little tiny bit. As pointed out by Andrew Hollins, CEO of the Fusion Industry Association, they don't even have a fusion reactor. There's no hope in the next 50 to 100 years actually of having one. You got to contain 300 million degree Fahrenheit temperatures with magnets so you can boil kettles of water. These people, no, but the reason they're doing it is for weapons, right? The industry is obsessed. It'll kill everything and everybody on the planet for its next holy grail. And the industry has this long, very long legacy of this scumbaggery. And one of their scams right now is they call nuclear power carbon-free. But really, is calling nuclear power carbon-free actually a pathetic act of desperation by the crazy nuke-tards? And that's exactly what it is. That's the manifestation. By calling it's a desperate, incredibly desperate act to equate nuclear with carbon-free. And carbon, first off, without carbon, we'd be like the moon, right? More carbon, the more species you got. It's bizarre. It's like Fukushima, where they pretend they're in the fuel pool, but there's no fuel pool. It's double talk. You probably got to play it backwards to figure out what they mean, see? Fusion has inherited benefits over traditional nuclear. They claim there's no chance of a meltdown or a runaway reaction, but you're talking about something burning at 300 million degree Fahrenheit temperatures. And they can shut it down in a few seconds, but it only takes a millionth of a second for an explosion to happen, right? The problem is, and it very well could be true, but we don't have one. We're not likely to have one. Geothermal actually exists and could solve all your problems. You can throw away gas, oil, nuclear, and coal, and just leave the infrastructure there and replace it with geothermal. And so, because it doesn't need storage, it's available 24 hours a day. It's stupid simple to do. It's half the price of nuclear, for instance, on its most expensive end. Basically, $3.4 million a megawatt. It's $3.4 billion for a gigawatt, which is enough for 1 million homes. And geothermal doesn't blow up, doesn't catch fire, doesn't melt down. You haven't got to evacuate half your country. The food doesn't get banned by 55 countries worldwide for a decade. The list is pretty significant. This fusion, though, fusion is a scam because the solution is already here. It's called geothermal. And you can back it up, geothermal, not that you need it, but if you wanted to add more to it, you add more geothermal, or you can actually toy around with wind and solar and storage. And there's tons of storage solutions, like 20 storage solutions for energy. And the only one they want to talk about, well, we don't have enough batteries for the whole city. I said, why the hell are you mentioning batteries? Because storage is not in the lexicon of the population, right? So it's meant to denigrate the topic and then redirect. Well, the only thing we got is nuclear. But it doesn't work that way because people are not idiots. They're just misplaced, misdirected, but they're not idiots. Everybody has the ability to wake up and get it together. And they're kept in this trance. Potentially unlocking limitless clean energy. Yeah, but geothermal has the potential, is available as obsolete technology. Why are you trying to develop something that don't exist? You've been at it for 50 years, and we're close than you were 50 years ago. Why put all your eggs in that basket? Why sign memorandums of understanding for something that doesn't exist? And they give you all of these straw man arguments. Right, and you got no choice. 'Cause Chernobyl and Fukushima, and it's strictly about raising money so that they can have an exorbitant lifestyle. So they can have cocktail parties. Their children go to prestigious colleges, and the inbreeding cycle never stops. Right. Only problem was they're not cannibalizing their children like the seagulls are doing because there's no food left because of the nuclear industry. A company aims to power the world for millions of years by digging the deepest holes. And the idea is, because drill bits are difficult, when you get down 4 miles, you got to pull everything out to change the drill bit. That's a headache, right? So there's a few technologies that showed up, though. And one is ready this year, and this one is ready in the next year or two. And they're just going to use the newest technologies to evaporate the rocks rather than try to drill through them, right? And another technology is going to use water jets to crush the rocks and pneumatic, liquid-driven hammers, pneumatic hammers, to bust the rocks up, and 25,000 psi jets to cut it up, and then the drill bit goes down and snaps through it, and this will be 7 times quicker, 7 to 9 times. So on the low end, say 7 times quicker, because you can drill down and get 6, 7, 800 Fahrenheit degree temperatures for a million years. And so that's just as effective and efficient, or better actually, than gas, oil, coal, and nuclear. You can replace them all with this technology. And so if you had a bunch of universities working on it, it would already be solved. You want to talk about pollution, because carbon's not pollution, but there's a lot of pollution. The world's 15 biggest ships create more pollution than all the cars currently on the planet. And there's 90,000 of these big container ships on the planet at the current time, which is equal to 4 trillion people on the planet, and when you scale up what we got today. Faults under Ishikawa nuclear plant are inactive. Well, you're like, you have 1,000 to 5,000 earthquakes off this coastline, so there's a lot of inactive. But if the tectonic plate lets go again, that could activate those faults, right? And this has been going on for eons. They have 1,000 to 5. They're on the ring of fire. So literally everything's got a fault line under it, and everything is vulnerable, because tsunamis that we see all too clearly are real. And Japan has a 3,000-year history recorded of these tsunamis. Overturning a previous view presented by an expert panel. They get another expert panel and say, no, everything's good, have a nice day. Thank you, come again. The nuclear watchdog, which was created after Fukushima, broadly accepted Hokuriku Electric's view that none of the faults underneath the plant in the town of Ishikawa are active. The agency expert team says the possibility of the fault underneath the reactor building number 1 reactor and number 6 reactor fault underneath the pipes carrying cooling water to the number 2 reactor could be active. So if you break the cooling pipes, which these are massive, by the way, if you shift that and you stop the water from coming through, the reactors will melt down, right? If you lose power, they'll melt down. If you lose cooling, they'll melt down right away. You know, like within an hour or two, they're melting down. They're past 5% by then. Under the non-regulatory agency's new regulatory standards, non-regulatory standards, we should add, safety critical buildings such as reactor buildings cannot be built on active faults. So the whole country is one big stupid active fault, and there's everything from volcanoes to constant earthquakes, not tremors, but earthquakes, and like biblical ones too. Let me give you one example, because that's always fun, right? Nuclear is the most batshit conversation you're ever going to have, though. These are lunatics. The whole industry is full of quacks. I type in quack. Earthquake data, get it together. Can't believe I was typing in quack, whack. So they had an earthquake in Hokkaido, Japan, in 2018. And they called it a 6.6. Not many people paid attention to it, but that was on the Japanese scale of 7. It dropped the payloads on all sides of the mountains. Have you ever seen anything like that? They hid that. They actually hit it. I've never seen any earthquake do something like that, where it dropped the payloads in all the mountains. So it's kind of hard to appreciate it in these long shots. But if at the bottom of it you can see, for instance, right, what a single landslide looks like. Let me see if I can find a better version of it for you. Yeah, because it's so hard to wrap your mind around what you're looking at when you look at it this way. It's unbelievable. We've never seen all the mountains lose their payloads. At least I haven't. And I'm pretty nosy when it comes to this stuff. Active faults are defined as faults that which actively go back 120,000, 130,000 years. But you're on a great big stupid fault line. You're the epitome of, like, you have thousands of earthquakes a year. You have 5,000 small ones a year, aftershocks. You have major ones multiple times each year. It'll lead to a sense of safety among the victims, right? This story cracked me up, only in Japan, right? Lawyer working for elimination of sexual harassment sued by an actor for sexual harassment. He even looks like a sleazebag, don't he? If that doesn't look like a sleazebag. He even looks like he's half dead, for God's sakes. He don't even need to put the zombie makeup on. He's already there. A Cattenom, which is French reactor, or German reactor rather, radiation measuring tools was faulty for days. Pretty sure it's faulty for a lot longer than that. Just 10 kilometers from Luxembourg border. Luxembourg has a law in 2020 that you can sue the nuclear plant 30 years after it closes if you get sick. That's a great law. In other words, we're coming for you. Because a lot of diseases and illnesses, not only deficiencies and injuries, won't manifest, right? Oh, that's so good. Great big stupid disease factories. Yes, the nuclear industry now is, because of the water dumping, they're gone into major censorship on any blogs on nuclear. Guess what? There's no blogs on nuclear. There's just one or two. I'm probably the most prolific, unfortunately, so I'm going to take the most heat. Workers at a nuclear reactor at Luxembourg doorstep were slow in detecting that a tool used to measure radioactivity levels. Well, like, what the hell are we talking about, though? It comes a month after the cheek of a worker at the Cattenom plant was exposed to significant radiation dose while working inside the plant's closed Unit 3 reactor, which was offline for a full year, after traces of corrosion from neutron bombardment was found. And France's EDF, which is the government, is still working to figure out how that happened. The French degenerate nuclear scumbag authority says, at one point last summer, none of the site's reactors were functioning. Well, France last year, and you're going to see it again really soon, had over half their fleet shut down from corrosion, and then he shut down 6 more reactors because he never had any fresh water. Like currently, they use about 70% of the fresh water of the country goes to the nuclear disease factories, which are all built in prime farmland, so that you can never have a future. And Macron has pledged to build at least 6 new reactors, which is irrelevant. All their reactors are super old reactors. So they're going to have 6 up and running, they say, by 2035, but they're not even started. There's zero possibility they can build a reactor in 12 years. It's zero possibility they can build 6 of them. It's zero. So they got to do that because the nuclear industry controls so many facets of the country. They got to constantly pander to the nuclear industry. France's nuclear output hit by a strike also. The anti-nuclear in France, they don't screw around, right? They're some of my favorite protesters is the French protesters. They're gone to war. It's war. And they're smart to do it that way, too. Smart. Let me see if I can find something for you. Gonna make it hard for me today? What's going on here? We go backwards, try that again. Don't put in France, put in French maybe. Oh, score. There's the French police. If you're going to protest, you might as well go, because they're going to beat the shit out of you, you might as well go all in, right?
The clashes were violent and widespread. Hundreds of police and anti-nuclear protesters chased each other through the fields and woodland near Vallon. Roadblocks were set up to try to prevent more protesters converging on the area, but at one point a group managed to block a section of the railway line. Fierce protests are expected along the 700-kilometre route to Germany. The train is the 12th and last shipment of German waste treated in France and then returned to Germany for storage.
Right, and the best one is you bring fire hoses with you, and so when they got all the shields lined up, your fire hoses with the brass spittoon on it, about this big, because when you slap down, that spittoon will go down and crack their helmets open and stuff like that, and you can break the guard that way. Yeah, that's my favorite by far. If you're gonna protest, you should dress like the cops, because they're gonna beat the shit out of you. They're gonna gash you. They got hardwood sticks, and they haven't got it to look pretty. They got it to smack you with. You smack them, fuck them back. Fuck them. NRC grants exemption from PG&E to operate Diablo Canyon nuclear disease factory. So Diablo Canyon, they were supposed to build something to replace it. They didn't, so they never had nothing to replace it. So they got to give them an exemption. This is what they're doing with all nuclear plants. Instead of building something to replace it when it's old and decrepit, they don't do it. Well, we can't turn it off. We got nothing to replace it. And it's really disgusting that they do that. That's exactly what they've been doing for the last decade or so. And now they're gonna really do it. They're actually openly calling to do everything possible not to shut down these old. See, when a reactor gets old, it becomes brittle from neutron bombardment, and you're talking 1,000 psi per square inch tanks containment to 2,000 psi. So you got 2,000 psi. The last thing you want is something that's brittle and full of lethal radiation. So imagine giving them. Imagine a car tire at 1,000 psi. Well, imagine something that's massive, 190 feet tall, 150 feet wide, and goes off at over 1,000 psi. And it just throws the fuel rods everywhere. In the shadow of Fukushima disaster, an unusual experiment is rewilding. Forgot about this. Shrubs and vegetation overtakes homes and open spaces in the difficult to return zone is a nuclear wasteland. That's what a difficult to return zone is. It's a nuclear wasteland. You don't go back. For goodness sakes, don't let people go back into these places. That's so cruel to do that to somebody. And the only people that benefits from it is the nuclear industry pretends, look, see, people are living here. Why are you fear-mongering? And that's 80 years of this. 80 years of denial, and everybody knows the difference. But their job, their whole legacy, the entire industry, the history of it is predicated upon that deception. Decontamination work continues. Well, you got to dig up the whole country and put it in bags. And remember when we said that 2012 or 13 or something? The next day, the government of Japan announces they're going to put everything in the country, topsoil, in bags. And they picked up 30 million one-ton bags. I was like, what's such a coincidence that I would say it the next day the government announced it? I was just in shock. I was like, my God, they're not really going to hoodwink the whole country and pretend they're going to do that. And they did. And when everybody stopped paying attention, they cut the bags open, 14 million of them, in Okuma, which is 2 miles away from the ongoing nuclear meltdowns, dumped it out in a farmer's field, and start growing food in it. The industry is insane. I'm being polite. They're lunatics. And while evacuation zoning orders have been lifted in communities, more are expected to be eliminated this spring. Like, you can't quantify lifting the restrictions. You got to do it because otherwise nuclear looks evil, right? So that's why they're doing it, because otherwise, well, you got all these restrictions on the frig with nuclear. So their solution is to get rid of the exclusion zones, and anybody wants to move back, we'll give you some money. They're actually paying people tens of thousands of dollars to move into the nuclear wasteland, but you got to stay there for 3 years. Years of human abandonment have seen the landscape evolve into a rare sight of natural rewilding, where the proliferation of many animals, and what they're talking about is basically hogs. The trees are not full of birds, there's not all kinds of insects and bees. They're always going to talk about large animals, mammals. And the animals are usually migratory animals that are just passing through anyway. The wild boars. The industry is so predictable, and by proxy then so pathetic, so that they're talking about this exclusion zone. And what they decided to do is open up little tiny parcels of land in the nuclear wasteland that's surrounded by nuclear wastelands. And so you're not allowed to stop. You got to drive right to your little parcel, your house, and go inside. You can't go out and play in the garden. And the nuclear industry has destroyed Japan and everybody else worldwide, and the world hasn't even... Like Nami and Minnesota, these have been abandoned for 12 years. And the radiation numbers we're talking about, it's like really... Peabody speaks about the possibility of another nuclear site in Bruce County. The focus this year's Canadian Nuclear Association Conference. in Ottawa, this was back in February, was different from last year. And among the local political leaders who attended the nuclear conference, because if you want to get elected, they got to go to these things, right? The Independent Electricity System Operator came out with a recent report on the need for new nuclear builds in Ontario, Canada. Ontario, Canada is perfect for geothermal. Geothermal could replace everything across the entire country. And if people see it happen, and it's happening everywhere now, geothermal, and so they know the industry is falling apart, they know the industry is doomed, so they're just trying to cannibalize, they're trying to fleece the countries of what they can before 2026. By 2026, the world will be able to prove that renewables, because there'll be around 4,800 gigawatts online from 2020 to 2026, which is equal to all the gas, oil, and coal and nuclear plants combined. So that renaissance of renewables is not going to stop there. But geothermal is just starting to take off. And geothermal has been around for thousands of years. And it's everywhere. Everybody has access to it. And if you took the universities and pushed the technology a bit further, and every time you type it Ontario, like Canada was captured by the nuclear industry in the 40s or 50s, and our country is completely destroyed by the nuclear industry. We don't even have a country anymore. Second Bruce unit begins refurbishment outage. So the Bruce Power, which owns the nuclear plants in Ontario, which is the government, right? No, that's Ontario Hydro, or Ontario Power or something. Ontario Hydro went bankrupt when they built the Darlington nuclear plant, actually, because they were so far over budget, so far behind schedule, right? But what they done was, the Canadian, when Fukushima happened, they went and got $13 billion memorandum of understandings from the government before the population figured out. And so just to be safe, they decided to remove the restrictions on all the food from Fukushima after 93 days, while 55 countries banned it from 14 prefectures, not just Fukushima, for a decade. So Japan couldn't ship it anywhere basically legally, only Canada, and Canada had no restrictions. And so everybody in Canada is sick because of this. Scumbags and the nuclear. So last year in Ontario, the Ontario government closed 750 wind and solar farms. And there was $4.3 billion for storage for renewables. And because there's no more renewables, they gave the $4.3 billion to Bruce Power, nuclear, and so they're going to build storage. If that's not evil, what actually is, I wonder? If it's not time to get rid of them, what is? Here's the scum, degenerate nuclear industry in Canada. Look at them all. Getting paid double time to pretend that they got any human attributes. The industry knows what it's doing. The industry knows it's evil. That's why it tells so many lies. Particularly the carbon-free law. And I'm sick of the carbon-free law. We cover it 100 times each day or something. Is calling nuclear power carbon-free a pathetic act of desperation by the crazy nuke tarts? Got 100% yes. The police force tasked with guarding the UK nuke plants. Security breaches at the UK nuclear police reach 8-year high. It's always like, what the hell is United Kingdom doing, man? How do you get that dysfunctional? Well, they don't have any incentive not to be evil, right? Because there's no one going to hold them accountable. The police force tasked with guarding the UK nuclear plants. What do you need police to guard your coal, oil, and gas plants? I mean your nuclear plants for? They recorded 37 security breaches last year, including thefts of uniforms, confidential documents, officers' diaries, classified tablets, 3 of them. That's nuclear incompetence reigns supreme, right? The findings came after the Furet lodged a Freedom of Information FIRE request with the Civil Nuclear Constabularies. And a lot of times they'll get denied, right? Civil Nuclear Constabulary. Man, just think about the Arrogans. The hideous Arrogans, eh? Alongside the thefts were 12 incidences of personal data being compromised, and a further 19 cases where staff lost their warrants or identity cards. Like La Hague reprocessing facility in France has 500 security guards. 500. 500. Try wrapping your mind around that statement. So imagine if you owned a mall and you hired 500 security guards. You know, if you own the airport and you got to hire 500 security guards, that's a lot of people, right? What are they up to that you need? What are they up to that you need 500 security guards? What is it you don't want people to see? Is armed force, the nuclear constabulary is an armed force which protects 10 civilian nuclear sites across the UK, including the Torres Donerae. Donerae is basically abandoned. It's going to be about 315 years before they can repatriate land, but who's going to be around in 300 years to quantify that assertion, I wonder? It is also responsible for security of nuclear energy materials when it's being transported. And so, like, what do you need? And they have so many accidents. They're like their own worst enemies. And the counterterrorism is the heart of its remits. Counterterrorism. So the whole thing is built on a propaganda machine. Because there's so much propaganda, now you're forced to hire hundreds of people because the propaganda is no dissenting voices are allowed. So if you go according to them, well, there's terrorists around every corner. We're going to have hundreds of armed police forces to keep them at bay, right? An appalling litany of security breaches undermined the nuclear industry's claim its sites are among the most secure in the country. What do you need all this security for? Because you're not supposed to have it on the planet. You don't have a single police officer at a coal plant, an oil plant, or a gas plant. You don't have to sacrifice everybody over 60 years of age if one breaks down. It's a despicable groups of people we've noticed over the years, without exception either. We've never seen an act of good faith from the industry. It's always in just absolute disgust when they do things. The thefts had happened in 2 instances when thieves accessed unmarked vehicles while they were parked at service stations. I got a million excuses. Which one do you want to hear? The year of incompetence. That's what the best way to describe nuclear. The biggest, stupidest thing humanity ever done was nuclear power. And CANDU is the Canadian reactors. So when you hear Candu, you're talking Canadian typically. Candu CEO on the future of Lavallin's nuclear business. And you can be sure it's going to be incredible propaganda. So Laval's subsidiary in a previous incarnation was responsible for designing and supplying the CANDU reactors in Canada. And across the world, there's not a lot outside, right? But there's some out there. 2 multi-unit sites in Ontario, and providing design engineering procurements for General Electric's small modular reactor Fable plan for Darlington. Darlington bankrupted Hydroelectric in Ontario, the company, because it was so much over budget and so far behind. They actually went bankrupt. And these are great big stupid disease factories. Let me explain that to you right quick. Is there anything we do that's quick anymore? That's okay. There you go. Oh, see, that was quick. The releases from Darlington are 846,000 trillion becquerels a year of just tritium with a 120-year life. And this is airborne and liquid. And so the discharge is into one of the biggest aquifers in North America. And right alongside of it is the intake for fresh water for millions of people in Toronto. Right alongside of it, of the discharge. And so UK Sizewell released 8 trillion becquerels of just tritium they're talking about a year. The Darlington was 846,000 trillion. It's stunning. And at the Point Le Peur in New Brunswick, Canada, in the Bay of Fundy, is 16,400,000 trillion becquerels a year. It's more than everybody else combined. It's absolutely untenable. And this is in the ocean. It's evil on a whole different scale. I don't have nothing I can compare it to. Nuclear is super good at being evil. That's the one thing that we see about these people. They're exceptional when it comes to being evil. They got that market cornered. The Atomic Energy Agency in Canada in 2011, we purchased all the commercial nuclear assets in 2011. Well, that's a pretty coincidence because that's when Fukushima happened. It's pretty disappointing. We're in a renaissance now. You're not in a nuclear renaissance, you lunatics. Where's the renaissance? We cover this 5 days a week, for goodness sakes, year after year after year. Never early, never late on top of that. We're covering it, period. And for that, because we're the only one doing it, they got no one to pick on. And so they got me beat into the ground. I don't even exist anymore. I'm literally just a shell on the side of the road. They got me beat. They beat the shit out of me now for the last decade straight. Every nuclear public relation firm out there has curb stomped me at one point or another. But I won't go away. I don't know how to give up, right? I don't know how to quit. I don't know how to slow down. because all the species are dying and humanity is on the doorstep too. And I can't, I can't, I can't, I can't handle the world not having someone fighting back. I just can't handle that. And the industry, if I gave up, the industry would freaking flip out. They got no one to pick on. All the public relation firms would be biting each other's heads off. So maybe I should quit. They'll cannibalize themselves like the seagulls were cannibalizing the babies today because there's no food in the ocean. So when I see carbon net zero, that's disgusting to put that 3 words together like that. That's despicable, man. That's pretty low. You're getting pretty low when you shove 3 of those words together. I'll explain that to you maybe. Because net zero was a paper by Miles Allen, which the United Nations took and weaponized against humanity and the species. There was 4 of these things. So there was net zero, there was global warming, which was Wallace. Then there was carbon, which was an advertisement campaign by BP Oil. It meant to demonize you for using it. And then there was James, the disgusting parasite from NASA, Hansen. Just a disgusting, despicable, revolting parasite. And he's the global warming. And his testimony, a single 15-minute testimony, has doomed everybody to this climate change narrative ever since 1986. It was an important turning point in the history of climate change. His testimony was a pivotal, marked the official beginning of the climate change global warming policy debates. So you had James Hansen, you had BP Oil, you had Miles Allen, and you had Wallace Brocker. These 4 people, United Nations took those 4 papers and weaponized it against everybody on the entire planet since, right? And constipated the Conference of Parties 29, I think it is this year, are based on those 4 papers. That's a whole different level of evil. And UN is not supposed to exist through a corporation like McDonald's, right? We're French fries, and they're consuming us, the nuclear industry, that is. But the lining of the stars between carbon net zero. It's not too often, though, that we see the words carbon net zero framed that way, and I don't like it at all. But that's Canadian, right? The Canadian got to be a little bit extra evil. And you got the government of Canada backing them. No, they captured the government of Canada. So this is back in March. Fiji on high alert over Japan's plan to discharge. So it looks to me like they were building this narrative where they want people to protest tritium, right? If you protest tritium, they're going to put you on the front pages. They'll want to interview you. List goes on, right? Because you buy into the fake narratives. And the narrative is everything is in the 1,000 tanks. But if you count the tanks, there's actually only 750 if you count the 300 small ones. Free event to help Columbia's nuclear industry go global. Last night I covered or was it last night or the night before, a bunch of studies on, night before I think it was, a whole bunch of stories on stillbirths and child malformations and congenital malformations for neonates and infants, cancer clusters in children, and all this other stuff. Cumbria is a nuclear wasteland because of Sellafield, right? And she even looks like a prick when you look at her, right? You know, she's not playing with a full deck. No, I'm pro-nuclear. I'm pro-nuclear. That's the equivalent of saying I'm a scumbag. If you're not going to look at both sides of the narrative, you're just a scumbag. Japan update homegrown missiles for nuclear plants. Well, should we get homegrown missiles for coal plants too? No, Dana, they don't melt down. How about homegrown missiles for oil plants? Yeah, that's a pretty good idea, right? No, Dana, they're gonna melt down and poison the planet. How about homegrown missiles for oil gas plants? No, Dana, gas plants don't melt down. You haven't got to sacrifice everybody over the age of 60. Homegrown missiles for the nuke plants. It's amazing we survived to 2023 is all I can say. Because the nuclear industry is in charge, right? They're running the show. Japan weighs bomb shelter subsidies as the missile threat grows. I'm going to have to start taking sleeping pills there at least 5 days a week when I'm doing these shows. Because my brain is like bouncing around in my skull as we're talking here. Is unlimited nuclear energy spook? Yes, absolutely. It's spook. U.S. claims breakthrough fusion nuclear power. There is no breakthrough fusion nuclear power. This was at the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, which is a weapons facility. They're not an energy facility, they're weapons. They're straight up mass murder and military industrial complex. They have no redeeming qualities. But to sell the idea, 100 years later, we're still playing around with fable. Youth climate activists march against fossil fuel. Nobody marches against Fukushima. 12 years of massacring the species worldwide. They need to weaponize the youths, right? Because they're scared shitless of the youths. So they need to keep them busy, keep them occupied. The biggest polluters is the container ships. Think about how container ships produce more pollution than all the cars on the planet. Try wrapping your mind around that statement, because there's 90,000 of them on the ocean at any given time. There's at least another 8,000 or 9,000 being built worldwide at any given time. Yeah. Ukraine war has made challenges facing Chernobyl's children greater than ever, says charity founders. If it wasn't for the charity groups helping the orphanages of the abandoned children from Chernobyl, because you just have a massive amount of children just dumped like they were garbage at these orphanages. And the orphanages don't even have money coming in. And so there's a few charities out there will actually go get the disfigured and deformed children that can travel and bring them somewhere else for holidays and treat them to... It breaks my heart constantly, eh? How the nuclear industries, they burn all this money but they won't help these victims. Smaller nuclear power plants built by Dow Chemical and X Energy. Again, they've been at this for decades. So how come they haven't built a small modular reactor after decades? And the small modular reactors are mobile, right? You can stick them on a truck and bring them anywhere and set them up and have a nice day. And they run on high-assay weapons-grade mixed oxide fuel. That's how that's the only reason they're going to work, is because they're going to use this incredible lethal fuel combination. And the problem with fuel, like the fuel cycle, when it goes through the cycle the first time, chain reaction, when you take it out, it's full of trillions of microscopic cracks. That's why you can't use it no more. And only about 2% of the fuel was used. But because it has trillions and trillions of microscopic cracks, it's very fragile, very, very, very brittle, right? And you can't leave it in the reactor any longer. And the fuel now continues to split the atoms, so they put it in pools. So the atoms now are just blasting out of it all day for decades into these pools of water, and they boil off. They'll boil off all the water in just a few days. So they have to add about 120,000 liters each day. But each liter that's boiled off is trillions and trillions of nasty atoms being released. And that's why they're surrounded by farms, the majority of nuclear power plants. Dow Chemical, they're the very, very last people you want with nuclear reactors. Trust me, their legacy is hideous. A nuclear waste storage facility was established in Ghana. Now, Ghana has a huge problem with sewage and just your regular garbage. It can't get that right. So how's it going to be able to contain nuclear without poisoning the entire population? It's not, Dana, that's the point. It's not. It's not. So we got twice as many votes as we got people on the show. That's magic. We're magic people. Imagine us to do that. How did they say it? Hang on, see if I can find it. My luck now, I won't find it, right? Oh, hang on, it's entertaining. It's entertaining. Oh. Yeah, it's too dangerous to label GMO. This is what the media is going to say to this young child activist. It's too dangerous to label GMO because people will become complacent, they said. And these are very famous people. Now, I played it backwards, and wait till you hear this. I'll adjust the volume, hopefully.
One danger that you'd face is we would just become immune to that label. We would accept that it's everywhere.
Play it backwards. So it basically says we're magic people. Imagine us. Let me try it. I can't remember it. One of the dangers people becoming immune to the label. Well, the reason you label over 3,000 items, but why not GMO? Imagine we're magic people. Imagine mocking to do this shit, something like that.
One danger that you'd face is we would just become immune to that label. We would accept that it's everywhere.
Yeah, so it makes more sense when you played it backwards. What's up with that, Dana? I don't know, right? In Brussels, the nuclear war between Germany and France is raging. Now, I seen that picture showed up. That picture's from March the 7th or something, is it? March the 5th. Because this was a show that we didn't do because we had, I make so many shows you can't do them all, right? And so days when you're busy, you can yank one of these out of the ether, because otherwise this goes down the black hole. And shows like this, there's absurd amount of important stuff here tonight. It should never go down a black hole, right? At least you're getting knowledge. At least call them scumbags. At least do that much. Well, the fight against global warming. You know, global warming is 100 foot tall. It's got big, long teeth. It'll eat your puppies if it can find it. Yeah, the container ships, there's 90,000 container ships. 15 of them produce more pollution than all the cars on the planet. There's 90,000 of them on the ocean at any given time. That's equal to 4 trillion people on the planet. But the biggest polluter is nuclear power plants. The death threat is nuclear power. And the container ships are brutal, but they're nothing compared to nuclear power plants. But in the scope of thing, if we're going to talk about pollution, we need to have that into the equations, right? Okay, so like it's been a long friggin', my arms are hurting. I don't know what to make of it, right? Because I'm so out of shape after the heart attacks and leading up to the heart attacks, I couldn't do nothing. Then I had 3 heart attacks and everything else. And so now we're almost through all the medication and starting to get busy again. And I'm just completely out of shape. So going down and just getting the boat, getting it down to the water, hooking the boat up, and I'm exhausted. I'm okay. I recover really quick, thank goodness. Getting the boat into the water, getting the boat out of the water, this is a freaking nightmare. It's an absolutely nightmare. But we get through it, so hopefully it gets a little easier because it's pretty hardcore stuff. But we got some serious data in today. We got good data in today. We're going to be out on the ocean again tomorrow. And I can't wait to get out tomorrow on a good day. Oh, well. James made a donation. Thank you, James. Because, yeah, we put out a lot today. It's worth it, though. We got to, right? And what I done with the truck on the weekend, bringing the boat down and back wasn't nearly as bad as it was before. So let's get busy. Thank you again, James, man. You're amazing. I'll do a shout out for everybody. How about that tonight? Let me try a shout out. Let's do the poll first, though. Let's close the poll down. Is calling nuclear power carbon-free a pathetic act of desperation by the crazy nuke tarts? And I usually don't put such colorful stuff in the poll, but when I was trying to come up with something, and crazy nuke tarts seemed appropriate when I put the poll out. And I felt a little bad after, and I was like, well, they are fucking crazy, so. Albert, let me do a good shout out. Savannah's Fort, Dana Nasana, hi Dana. Colette, hi Colette. Albert, Angel's Place, Stephen Young. We send hugs out all the time for Stephen Young. Stephen is struggling, man. He's still got the spirit, but he wasn't able to recover, from his illness. And most people don't either, of that particular type of illness. But he's still got a really good spirit. Stephen Young used to write senators all the time about Fukushima, and then he would CC me the replies, and I really appreciated it. It took a lot of guts to do what he was doing. John Shiflett. Good night, everybody. I would imagine tomorrow night is, I don't know for sure, but I'm imagining tomorrow will be mostly ocean stuff. We'll cover video and footage and stuff. And I'll probably be out all weekend too. P-Hig. If I butcher your name, folks, I apologize. Chelsea, MC. Hi, Chelsea. Chelsea wrote a book. She spent a long time writing the book and finished it up a number of months back. It must have been some relief, eh? Bubbly Blinders, I think I shouted out. Nick Daniels, hi everybody. I'm always wearing a life jacket, folks, by the way. If I'm by myself, that is, right? I'm wearing the life jacket. For sure. As soon as I step on the boat, I got a life jacket on. First thing I'm doing. Nabi. Looks, we're almost down to the names. Oh. Star Dance. Hi there. Yeah, no, I think everybody probably gets you. Did I get everybody? If not, my apologies. If you made it this far, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. Costs us very little and it goes a long way. It's a simple thumbs up. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. Tomorrow's the first day of summer, of real summer, where it's going to be like 25 to 30 degrees. Light winds from the west blowing offshore to bring down the groundswell and the waves. I actually got seasick today. It's hard to, when I showed you the video, we were hidden under the land behind an island. But on the way out, it was pretty rough. Everybody have a great night. We'll see everybody tomorrow. If you think about it, try to give us a thumbs up. I'll see everybody on the other side. Hi, Richard. Take care, folks. We'll see everybody tomorrow. Take care. Good night.